All right, algebraic reasoning. Today we are going to talk about division properties of exponents. And so to divide powers with the same base and to raise a quotient to a power, you use the properties of exponents to divide powers with the same base. You can use repeated multiplication to determine quotients of powers with the same base. Expand the numerator and denominator, then divide out common factors. And this is regarded as the long way. Okay, so what this first part is just essentially saying is, when we're given something like 4 to the 5th divided by 4 cubed, we know 4 to the 5th means you have 4. You're multiplying 4 5 times on the numerator and 4 3 times on the denominator. So what's going to happen is you're going to have, you can cancel a certain number of 4s out, right? The amount we can cancel out is 3. And that leaves you with 2 left over. What this property is showing, what this action that we're doing is subtraction. So, hence the rule is, right here, that if the bases are the same, now the bases have to be the same, but when you divide, you subtract. So we see a couple of examples here. We see 2 to the 6 over 2 squared. That is the same thing as 2 to the 6 minus 2, which is 2 to the 4th. It doesn't matter if we're using letters, x to the 4th over x to the 7th. This is interesting. We get x to the negative 3. And what's interesting about this is that we know when it's negative, we flip it to the other position. So if it's this one, in this case, it's in the numerator, it's going to go to the denominator. If it was in the denominator, then it would go back to the numerator. And their last example, s to the 3/4 over s to the 1/2. You're just subtracting fractions, and you end up getting s to the 1/4. Okay, so essentially when you divide, you subtract. Let's move on. So let's do a couple examples. So here we have s to the 12 over 5 divided by s squared. We just finished saying that this means the same thing as subtraction. And what does this mean? This is 12 over 5 minus, now 2 is the same thing as 2 over 1. So what I'm going to do here, in order to subtract, we have to have the same denominator. So we'll multiply both top and bottom by 5. And this will get me, see, 12 over 5 minus 10 over 5. Because the denominators match, we can subtract, and we'll get c to the 2/5. 12 minus 10 is 2 over 5. And that's it. Okay, so they're throwing some ugly looking fractions at you, but not too much of a deal, big deal. Our letter B, we subtract now, keep in mind, so we're going to be subtracting the a, so this is a to the 4 minus 6, and then we'll do the b's. So this is going to be b to the 8 minus 3, which yields a to the negative 2 and b to the 5th. Now, we don't usually leave it with negative exponents, so this final answer will be a squared on the bottom, because it's negative, it will go to the bottom of the denominator, and b to the 5th on the top. And that's it. The nice thing about this one, you can literally see that if you have 4 a's on the bottom and 4 a's on the top and 6 on the bottom, that you would be left with 2 a's on the bottom. And then you would be left with b to the 5th on top, right? You got 8 on the top, 3 on the bottom. It cancels out, 3 will cancel out, you're left with 5. So it's another way of thinking of it. Okay, so these are the sort of questions that you'll see a lot of times on standardized tests that are very, very intimidating in terms of when you first see them. They're really not that bad. So let's see here. The population of Pennsylvania is about 1.24 times 10 to the negative 7. The population of North Dakota, is 6.4 times 10 to the 5th. But how many times greater is the population of Pennsylvania than North Dakota? So this is a fancy way of just saying, to figure out how much bigger one is than the other, we would just divide. So this is just a fancy way of saying division. So we're looking at something like this. And here, the back part is a little easy to do because we just have to subtract. So this is going to become 1.24 over 6.4 times 10 squared. that's the easy part. Now, how do we deal with the fraction? Well, you would we need to move the decimal place here too, so that means we're going to have to move this one too. By the way, what we're doing when we're moving the decimal place over is we're actually just multiplying by 100 on the top and the bottom. So this is going to be 124 over 640. And now, of course, times 10 squared. So now we're going to break down 124 over 640. And my suggestion, if you're not going to do this with the calculator, is to just ask yourself, well, what does 124 break down to? Well, I know it's divisible by 4, so I'm going to say 4 times 31, and 64 I'm just going to break down to, so let's just say 64 times 10. Okay. Now, 4 is 2 times 2, and 2 will cancel with 64 to give me 32, and 2 will cancel here to give me 5, and this will give me 31 over 32 times 5. Okay, and I think that's the easiest way to break that down. Now, this is a little painful in the sense that, so I keep looking at it because I keep wanting it to be 32 on top, that we can't break it down, so we'll just multiply on the bottom. So 2 times 5 is 10, carry the 1, 3 times 5 is 15, plus 1 is 16, so we have 31 over 160 times 10 squared. Now, without a calculator, that's about as far as we can go with that. Okay. So hopefully that makes sense. I'm looking at this and I guess we can technically say 31 times 100 over 160. And then we could keep breaking it down if we wanted to. So it's 0 and 0 to cancel out. 10 and 16 are both divisible by 2, so this is 5 and 8. So you could break this down to 155 over 8 times as big if you wanted to be a little bit prettier with the number. But that's not going to be, we know that's not going to be able to be broken down any further than that, other than by dividing by long division. I'm going to say that's sufficient to leave it like that. The big thing I want you to realize is when you see these, then is the intro part, that we can easily subtract 7 and 5 and get 2. Okay. So you can repeat multiplications and quotients raised to a power. So this is just illustrating what the exponent rule is. We've kind of seen this already. This is the rule here. We've already seen this. Okay, so we're going to simplify. So this is kind of like a review. So what would I do here if this is all raised to the third? Well, we're going to multiply the exponents. So this would be w to the 15. And with the part that most students make the mistake with is there's a 4 to the 1 here. So that means you're going to end up getting 4 cubed. And so we can leave it as this, or 4 cubed is 64. Okay. And the last one, this one's very interesting. So what I would do is I would first play with the negative sign, which is a fancy way of saying reciprocal. So we'll notice that I flipped numerator and denominator. And then we're going to multiply every exponent by 4. So this is going to become d to the 8, 3 to the 4th, c to the 12th, which breaks down to d to the 8th, 81, c to the 12th. And that's it. And there you have it. So, big rule that we learned, this last bit was a little bit of a review. Big rule that we really just learned today is that when you divide, you subtract exponents. So, I hope that makes sense, and I'll find you all in the next math video.